What's up, guys? Welcome back to Voltage and Villains. I'm Moira.
And I'm Phoenix.
And today we're going to talk about the mysterious disappearance of Maura Murray. This is a very worrying case that has baffled the internet for a long time. And as of recently, it's been coming back up because her sister, Maura Murray's sister, Julie Murray, began a podcast to talk about her disappearance. So let's dive right into it. Do you have any initial thoughts?
So you said her sister made a podcast?
Yes, her sister made a podcast.
How long ago did she make this podcast?
Last year.
Okay.
Very recent podcast.
I feel like, and how long ago did she disappear? Was this over a decade ago?
Yeah, it's been 21 years.
You know what's crazy? I feel like a lot of cases from the early 2000s have started to get solved last year. Like it seems like a lot of the documentaries that I've watched or a lot of the podcasts that I've listened to, it's like a lot of resolutions from early 2000s have come in last year. But there's a lot of new technology and
access to things
that are coming about.
Yeah,
so,
because back then it only used to be TV shows that would like explain a solved case, a cold case. But now you have podcasts, you have YouTube videos, you have the internet. You know what I mean?
And then now, because people have access to all those podcasts and YouTube videos and things like that, then they go, wait, I was in that area at that time. Oh, wait, I actually think I know a little something, and then they give tips that end up helping. So
ways that help. Exactly. So, and just like that, just like, you know, people share tips. Also, a lot of misinformation can go around, and with this case, a lot of misinformation has gone around for a very long time. So we're gonna start by getting to know Maura, because that was like a huge focus on like Julie, her sister's point, and also like a lot that wasn't discussed on the internet. Maura was a star, academically excelling athlete. She really did amazing in both track and field in school, to the point where she was accepted to, I think, Harvard, but decided to go to the academy of the United States Army Academy of West Point. And as you know, West Point doesn't really accept everybody. They accept like only about 10% of their applicants. And West Point is also a very tough school to attend because it's like mentally challenging and physically challenging as well. So they'll like teach you things that are mentally challenging, like probably a little more advanced in like mathematical topics and other things like that. But also like they challenge you physically, where you have to meet physical army requirements. So you're basically kind of like in the army. So
it's kind of like a pathway school. So like now you're well equipped, both physically and mentally.
Yes, exactly. Okay. All right, exactly. Cool. The reason why she decided to attend this academy was because her sister, Julie, the sister who made the podcast, was also at West Point. Julie was probably like 2 or 3 years older than Maura. So they were very close. They had a best friend-like relationship. So everything, you know, little siblings, what they do, they always copy what the older sibling does. And, you know, Maura's family believes that even if they wanted to try and stop Maura from going to West Point, they couldn't because Julie was there. She started attending West Point Academy. She excelled, obviously. She was excelling in high school. She excelled at West Point Academy as well. She did really well and got on like the super advanced running team at West Point, which is really challenging. And apparently not many women were able to get into that team. Maura was very outgoing. She was funny. She was quick-witted. You know, one of those people that gives you a smart answer real quick, but they're actually funny and they're kind of interesting. She was like that. So at West Point, apparently, because their life was so rigorous and so straight, like it's like the army. Like you can't decorate your room too much. You can only have white bed sheets. You have to wear a uniform. You have to do this. You have to do that. Like that was a lot, I guess, for Maura. So she started like not cracking under the pressure, but kind of, because she probably felt boxed in. So academically, she's doing fine. Physically, she's doing well. But there's talks of like how Maura was going through a eating disorder at West Point Academy. And her friends didn't talk about that. And when her sister Julie found out she had an eating disorder, she wasn't dismissive about it, but she was kind of like, stop it.
What eating disorder is this?
I believe it was bulimia.
Is that the one where you eat and then you force yourself to throw up?
Yeah, you eat a bunch and then you force yourself to throw up.
I don't know much about these eating disorders, but like, isn't that more of like a mental thing.
It is a lot
than
of
a physical thing, because like your body's not gonna force you to put your finger down your throat and make you
and make you bring it back up.
But like, so it's like a mental thing.
Yes.
Could it have had something to do with the fact that it's a physical school and she had to be in tip top shape? Because a lot of athletes have eating disorders.
Yes.
Like a lot of high intensity athletes, or athletes that like they have to be around a certain weight or have to be able to perform certain tasks,
have disorders.
Eating disorders. I actually think at one point I had a partial like eating disorder. Really? Not where I was forcing myself to throw up, but there was times where like I would go a long period of time without eating, like on purpose. Yeah. Right? Because I'm like, no.
You probably felt like that was going to make you fat or something, or like it was going to interfere with
what I was doing physically. Yeah. And then there was times where when I would eat again, I would eat way too much. Right?
Yeah.
That's part of the reason that you see a lot of like boxers and professional athletes, like once they retire, they get really, really big.
It was probably that, but her sister Julie on Julie's podcast, she attributes it to it being West Point was a point where you couldn't really control much. Everything was controlled for you. Whatever you did was controlled. You kind of followed a schedule. So Julie believes that the eating disorder was sort of like a way for Maura to have some sort of control of her life. Okay. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like something that she could actually do.
Yeah.
And
what's crazy is, when you first go away to college. Yeah. And you're out on your own for the first time, that's the first time you actually do have control over majority of things in your life, how you decorate your room, how you do things, but if you're going to a military school that's that rigid and you're on a team that's that difficult to get on, there's a very strict program with the team, there's a very strict program with so I could
training,
see how
everything
I can see how somebody can lose
control. Feel like
they have zero control over their life. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's unfortunate.
So that was one of the things that Julie had discussed on her podcast, that a lot of internet sleuths, netizens, whatever you want to call them, armchair detectives. That's what a lot of people were bringing up. There was never full confirmation from official sources of whether or not she had an eating disorder, but according to her sister, she did. So that's one of the things that, she cleared up on the podcast. But moving on, another point that Julie made, and another point that a lot of like internet sleuths made, was that Maura was sort of like going through a weird character phase where she was figuring out things about her life. So for example, there was this one point where at West Point, her class took a trip to Fort Knox. You know Fort Knox is super locked down. Everything is super strict. So Maura and one of her friends went to a Walmart on base. It's not really a Walmart. I don't know what they call it, but it's like an exchange store or something like that, where you pay for goods in the military base. And apparently Maura ended up stealing about $5 to $10 worth of makeup. There was no need for her to steal, because she had funds that the school had given her to buy things. So there was really no point in stealing. Does that make sense? So you steal for no purpose. So she ended up getting caught. The store supervisor, something like that, asked Maura to step aside as she was trying to leave, and they ended up asking her, like, did you steal something? And she immediately fessed up and was like, yeah, I did, and actually ended up getting into a lot of trouble because of that. Yes. So that was one of the beginning phases of like,
did she ever explain like why she did it?
So her sister Julie did ask her why she did it, but she responded with, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
So maybe it was one of those things.
So it goes back to the whole, okay, where I'm suspecting you of having an eating disorder, and now you're stealing even though you don't have to, and you can't even explain.
And
why.
You can't explain.
So clearly, you're just going through stuff mentally.
That you're not talking about. Exactly. Okay. So because she stole, leadership in West Point ended up finding out, and she ended up getting into what they call an honorary committee, an honor committee, an honor board. And that's usually like a punishment. That's usually when a place you go to, or a group of people that you see when you do something bad. So at West Point, cadets or students, they have certain rules, certain honorary codes they have to follow, right? They don't steal, they don't lie, they don't hit others, like things like that. And one of those things obviously was stealing. So Maura stole. So Maura had to go in front of the honor board and have them kind of like judge her case and say like, were you wrong for doing it? Why did you do it? You know, and it kind of suggest a punishment. So when Maura went up against her honor board, she admitted that she was wrong. She was like, I did it. It's my fault. I am 100% guilty. And the honor board only had to decide her punishment. But between investigating and figuring things out, they ended up taking Maura out of class and out of practice a lot. So stress was like now even higher. So imagine now having a very strict schedule, having very rigorous classes, having to do a lot of physical activity, and now being taken out of those things to be judged for something that you did and you know you did wrong, and then still having to do all of those things at the same capacity. So Maura started struggling even in those departments. Yeah, exactly. More than before. So, you know, that became an issue when her grades started dropping. So now the only thing that the honor board had to do was decide her punishment, like I mentioned before. But it was taking them a while. So during this entire process, that's when she met a guy named Bill Rausch. Bill Rausch became her boyfriend. He was a honor mentor. He was kind of like one of those people that guides you through the process of things. So if you do something wrong, he kind of like guides you like, okay.
So he got appointed to her because of what she did?
I don't know if he got appointed to her, but he...
But she only met him because she did.
Because he was on the honorary board. Not the board itself, but he was part of the board and all of that stuff. So they met. They started hanging out, dating, you know, all that fun stuff. Apparently, during that time period, Julie and Maura had found out that Bill, during the time that they were dating at West Point, Bill cheated on Maura. And there was this big issue because Julie even had problems with Bill after that. So Julie was like very closed off to Bill after she found out all those things. And all this was happening during the honorary board thing.
Wait, so Julie had... What do you mean by had problems with him after? So they stayed together.
They stayed together.
Okay.
But gotcha. They met and they were together since.
Yeah, but then they found out about the cheating thing.
And then they stayed together.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. So in between that time period, the honor board had not made a decision yet as to what Maura's punishment was going to be.
How long at this point has this been going on?
It's probably been a few weeks. It's probably been a few weeks. But in that time period, if you think about it, if you go to a very strict school and have all these things to do, it's a lot. It's a long time.
Yeah, that's true.
So Maura decided, you know what, I'm just going to transfer to another school. And I guess her decision came to transfer to another school because if they did decide to punish her, everything was going to be on record. Or if they decided to expel her, it was going to be on record. And her transferring to another school
would have been harder.
Would have been even harder.
Yeah, so it's like, let me get up out of here. The fact that you're taking this long with the decision
is making me nervous.
It's making me nervous, and you're kind of costing me the most important thing that I'm actually here for, which is school.
Right.
So the fact that you're just, and I think at that point that's just like semantic shit.
Probably.
Because let's really think about it, right? Mm-hmm. Sure, yeah, she stole.
Right.
Right. It was like what? You said $10 worth of stuff.
Yeah.
She admitted that she stole. How hard is it to come up with a punishment? Now you're just trying to be. You're just
facetious
trying,
at that point.
You're just trying to make an extra point. And it's like, dude, if you're gonna suspend me, suspend me. If you're gonna expel me, expel me. If you want me to do community service every Saturday for the next 8 months, tell me that. But you can't string this along for weeks. Like, you're acting like this is a grand jury and I just murdered somebody, and you gotta like deliberate and keep talking about it. Like,
I guess for them, it's more of like we're a military school and we laid out all of our rules and everything in front of you.
But every school lays out all the rules.
That's
I think
true.
I agree with her at that point where it's like, I just, before it gets even worse, I gotta go.
Yeah. So, but according to Julie's sister, in between all of this time period that she was at school till about maybe like 3-4 years ago, West Point wasn't known for expelling students. If they did if they did something really bad, very few people got suspended or completely expelled from the school. Okay. So to Julie's point, it was sort of like, I don't know why she left, and probably it was because she kind of wanted to quit without quitting. Does that make sense? It was kind of like,
too much anyways.
Yeah.
She probably came to the realization of why she stole, and she was like, you know what, I'm just going through shit mentally. Let me get up out of here.
Let me get out of here before something else bad happens. So Maura decided to transfer to the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, and she decided to pursue nursing, which is the same career that her mom had. And at UMass, what we will call University of Massachusetts, at UMass, she decided to, of course, go on the cross-country team, and she did really well. She was one of like the most amazing athletes at that university at that time. She made friends very easily, and also Bill and Maura stayed together during that process. So they were having a long distance relationship because, as you know, West Point is in New York, in the state of New York, and University of Massachusetts is in Massachusetts. So it's a few hours of a drive. It's like 2 or 3, just about. But they decided to stay together and pursue things. And that's when we sort of like, things sort of calmed down a little bit for Maura. She kind of like starts to figure life out a little bit. Things got a little bit better. She kind of like was seeming to enjoy her nursing program a little bit more, enjoy her process of being in school. Also, her sister did say that one of the things that Maura enjoyed was having cow print sheets. It was purple cow print sheets, and apparently when she went to her dorm, she had purple cow print sheets. So if Maura had cow print sheets, was having a much better time, it reflects on, like we said before, how mentally restricting West Point was for Maura. So now she had that freedom. Now in her nursing program, she had to travel to other hospitals. You could say hospitals, other clinical places to complete her clinicals. When you're a nurse, you have a very not rigorous program, but you have to, I guess, complete a lot of like training. But because Maura needed to travel for a clinical, she needed a car. So Maura's dad, Fred, gave her a car. It was a 1996 black Saturn. A few months later, Maura ended up injuring herself. This was around 2003. She ended up injuring herself and was not able to run with the same intensity as she would before.
So she was still on the track team at UMass? So she was still on,
Okay. Like we said before, like she was still running at UMass. She was doing really well. But because of her injury in 2003, she decided to just calm down and continue pursuing her nursing career. And, you know, she wouldn't necessarily stop running just because she got injured. She just slowed down the pace a lot. So as months go by, everything is perfectly fine. Everything seems to be good. There comes a point where Maura's car starts to mess up. That Saturn that her dad gave her completely just started smoking and not being able to drive well. So Fred, Maura's dad, got very concerned because obviously you have to drive this car every day. You have to go to clinicals. You need the car. So he decided to take matters into his own hands and offered to help buy Maura a car. Aside from Maura's, you know, savings and things like that, because she worked 2 part-time jobs at her school to make up for gas and, you know, expenses.
Yeah, car troubles in college could be very inconvenient.
Especially when you really need them.
Especially when you need the car in order just to get to school.
So to top it off, also during Maura's time at UMass, Maura gave signs of her eating disorder being out of control. Maura ended up...
So she still had the eating disorder at UMass?
Yes, she still had very serious signs of the eating disorder. And we know this because Maura stole a credit card and ordered a lot of food. Back in 2001, she ordered about $79 worth of food from the pizza shop. Multiple sandwiches, pizzas, things like that. A lot of people speculated that she was ordering food to share with other people, but really she was just probably ordering the food for herself. Because of her eating disorder. And she ended up getting caught because the girl whose card she stole reported her card being stolen to the police. The girl had recognized like charges that she had not made at all. It was from this pizza place. So she called the police and she told them, hey, my card is being charged. I don't know, I didn't make the purchases. So the police came to investigate. They called the pizza shop, and when Maura ordered probably for a second, third time from the pizza shop, the police followed the pizza car, and, you know, they found out that Maura was the one ordering from the card. When the police confronted Maura, she was like, I did it. She fessed up all the way. She was like, it was me. And she ended up getting charged with credit card fraud. She had to end up going to court, and they told her, hey, like, we understand you did this, but if you maintain good behavior, we will not put this on your record. So she was kind of getting like a little bit of a free pass at that point.
A second one.
Right.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Technically.
Yeah.
Right.
She has yet to pay the consequences fully for stealing at this point.
Stealing. Yeah. Right. So on February 5th, Maura was scheduled to work a late night shift at her security job. Remember before I had mentioned Maura had two part-time jobs at her college to pay for gas and expenses. One of those was her security job, where she just checked IDs. You know, in school they ask you for your ID when you walk in.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you should, like that. That's literally what she did. So that night was a little different than it usually is for Maura. Julie on her podcast said that Maura usually at night tended to do more of like homework, but that night was different. That night Maura took a few phone calls from her cell phone. One of them was from her older sister Kathleen, and another one was from her boyfriend Bill. The one from her sister Kathleen was apparently a very disturbing call for Maura, and Julie had explained exactly what was said in the phone call. Apparently Kathleen, Julie and Maura's older sister, was had alcohol problems and went to rehab. When she was coming out of rehab, her fiance picked her up and took her to an to a liquor store.
What?
So this was like a really fucked up way for him to kind of like keep her under control. They believe, like, you know, one of those sucky relationships.
When the enabler is also the controller.
Yeah, exactly. So it was one of those, and this apparently really disturbed Julie, but she didn't really show much signs of not being bothered by it, but fully being affected by it. It probably affected her a lot mentally though. This call with her sister took place later on in the night, probably around 10-11. Earlier before that, Maura also spoke to her then boyfriend Bill twice. So one time was for about 20 minutes and another one was for about 6 to 10 minutes. Bill recalls the conversations not being heavy or super important. It's, you know, casual couple conversations. What'd you do today? Things like that. And around 1 a.m., Maura started breaking down uncontrollably. People were worried. Her coworkers were very worried because Maura wasn't even talking. She was just crying. So they called their supervisor, Karen, and Karen came, saw Maura, and asked her what happened. And the only thing Maura would say was, my sister. So a lot of people believe that it was her sister's phone call.
The sister that just got out of rehab.
Yes.
Oh,
the
wow.
sister that just got out of rehab call. So a lot of people believe that that's what was really that disturbed her. So Karen, the supervisor, told Maura to just, you know, go home, take it easy. We'll see you on your next shift.
Yeah, understandably.
She took her to her dorm and even offered to stay with her. Maura was like, no, I'm okay. I would like to be alone. And Maura also surprisingly lied. She had said that, hey, I have a roommate. Like, I don't want company. My roommate's upstairs. I'll be okay. And this was a lie because Maura was in a single dorm, meaning she was by herself.
Whoa.
She did not have anyone to share with.
So why'd she lie?
Odd for someone to do, and a lot of people were speculating, did she want to do something? Like, what was the problem? But apparently, according to Julie, Maura was very introverted, so she didn't really like sharing a lot of things with people. So I have a roommate was a very quick way to get the supervisor to kind of leave.
Understandable.
It's kind of like, I want to be alone. I have a roommate. I'm okay. Like,
and I mean, yeah, if you're crying like that at work, and then to the point where your supervisor felt the need to walk you to your car, and then even offer to stay the night with you,
it's not like, stay the night, but to spend some time with you.
Spend some time when you go upstairs. You must have like really looked distraught to the point where the way that her supervisor was probably asking was like super concerned. Yeah, like so. Yeah, like, if you're introverted, then that would make sense why she would lie. Why she would lie? But still, to me, that could mean multiple things. Yeah, if you lie like that,
it can exactly. And a lot of people were concerned, but that's what was said. Now the next day, February 6th, it was a snowstorm. So classes were canceled. Then I guess no one really heard much or saw much of Maura, but everyone was inside because it was snowing, and classes were canceled. The next day, February 7th, which is 2 days before her disappearance, her dad went over to Amherst and was trying to help Maura buy a car. Remember, we had mentioned before that Maura's car was starting to break down. It was smoking up. It was a lot. So he really came to help her, and he had brought $4,000 of cash with him to help her buy the car. And a lot of internet articles, internet forums had speculated that Maura took the $4,000 and ran away with it, and a lot of different things. But Fred in Julie's podcast really honed in on the fact that he just went there with the money to help Maura buy the new car, which makes sense. $4,000 to buy a new car.
Yeah, $4,000 to buy a new car. That doesn't seem suspicious. But you said a bunch of people online thought that maybe Maura's disappearance has to do with her stealing the money and leaving.
Yes.
So I'm assuming that the money ended up missing with Maura.
No.
So if the money didn't end up missing, then how is that even a theory?
It's just internet speculation.
That's a speculation that doesn't even make any sense.
There's some speculation.
Like the money would have to be missing along with Maura in order for that to be a theory.
Fred, the dad, didn't say that the money was missing. But remember, we have not heard from the dad or anybody in regards of that money. These are all events that, as we'll later find out, we didn't really hear much about Maura or the case, or a lot about the family, or much, because there was a lot going on. And there are a lot of details that were not discovered, but fully shared with the public for a long time.
And so that's where the podcast helps.
That's where the podcast helps.
Okay.
Because it fully, dives into what happened that day. So Maura's dad, Fred, comes to Amherst to help her buy a car. They go car shopping. When you're car shopping, you don't find a car immediately. You got to look at the condition. You got to see if you like it, the price, if people are willing to go down, all these things. So apparently they did not end up buying a car that day. And Fred did say that he does regret not buying a car that day for one of the reasons as to why she disappeared. Well, we're going to get to it. So that day, on February 7th, after car shopping, Maura met up with some friends and asked her dad to take her to the liquor store so they could go to a party later. The dad, like any dad, would be like, sure, you're a responsible adult. I'll take you.
Is Maura even 21 at this point?
Yes, I believe she was probably like 20.
Underage drinking?
No. She was 21, I think.
I thought she just got to college.
She's probably in her second or third year.
I was just thinking, hey, maybe if she went, anyways, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, that was it. I just wanted to.
You were just concerned.
I was just concerned if there was underage drinking involved and nobody's talking about it.
No.
That's what I was thinking.
No.
Okay, yeah. So she's well into the drinking age.
She's well into the drinking
age.
Age. Okay.
I was just needed to make sure some responsibility was
concerned medicine. I completely get it. So Maura goes and hangs out with her friends that night and asks her dad to take his car instead. She asked him, hey, can I borrow your car? I'll drop you off at your hotel. I want to go and hang out with my friends. He said yes, of course. But that night, unfortunately, Maura got into an accident. Maura ended up crashing into a guardrail and completely destroying her dad's car. Completely. And
yikes.
When they look at the police reports, they say that Maura was not intoxicated. They don't mention anything about being intoxicated, but a lot of people believe she actually was because she came from a party.
Yeah.
The police report only says that she was inattentive to driving, and that's how she ended up crashing. My theory is that Maura was going through a lot at that time, and because she was by herself and was probably drinking, she probably got stressed and probably started crying uncontrollably. Not uncontrollably, but crying to a point where you shouldn't be driving. You know what I mean? And she probably ended up crashing into the guardrail, which is very concerning because now she's had multiple incidents of different things happening. Or sleep. That could also be it.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. She works the night shift.
Mm-hmm.
Well, somewhat of the night shift.
Somewhat.
She's usually would be in bed at this time where this accident is taking place. Right. Or getting ready to go to bed.
Right.
So it would make sense. And then, working that type of shift and then going to school, I doubt that her school hours were completely conducive with her 2 full-time jobs.
Probably
Meaning like
not.
if let's say she gets off at 3 a.m., I doubt that her first class is at midday. Right. It's like, school classes usually start really early in the morning. If you take night classes, they end around 6, 7. So, I mean, where would she, with a very busy schedule? Yeah, like that. It's safe to say that like maybe she was a little tired when she was driving. And that's usually when people hit guardrails, especially if it's not an accident that involves multiple cars. If it's just you, usually it would be a scenario where you were tired. And having the type of schedule based on what I'm hearing that she has, it would make it like it doesn't seem too far fetched to say that and you don't need to completely fall asleep behind the wheel to hit a guardrail.
It's a slight.
All it takes is
nod.
a split second.
Yeah,
split second nod, and you're off into the guardrail.
That's very true.
Yeah,
but also another thing that kind of like doesn't disprove that, but kind of like talks against that point is that Maura had told her friends at the party that she was going to her dorm. But she ended up trying to go to her dad's hotel to drop off the car. So that's where people were confused because she had told her friends, I'm going back to the dorm. But now you end up crashing near your dad's hotel, near the campus.
But that doesn't disprove that maybe she was a little tired. And that's why she hit the guardrail.
That's true.
All I hear when I hear that she was driving more towards her dad is, if anything, it would defend my it defends my point more because if you're tired, you'd say, you know what, I'm probably not going to wake up at a good time tomorrow, early enough to where I'm going to be able to get him his car so he could do what he has to do. Let me go over there and drop this car off.
That's true.
So that way I could take a cab or an Uber home. Well, not back then, no Uber, but take a cab home.
Take a cab home.
And then that way tomorrow I can sleep in or I could do whatever I got to do and I don't have to worry about bringing my dad
his car back. That's
so it doesn't.
That's a good point.
None of this sounds far fetched to me.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't sound. But
it sounds like there's a lot of explanations. That could be as to why she's. Because how many times do you tell somebody you're going somewhere and then you decide on something else and go that opposite way?
And go the opposite way. That's very true. Yeah. So the tow truck came for the car and Maura took a ride with the tow truck because the lot apparently was next. The lot that the car was gonna get delivered to was very close to her dad's hotel. So Maura ended up going to her dad's hotel. This was probably like really early in the morning, like super early, like 3, 4, 5 in the morning. So Maura had to end up waiting for the hotel's manager to give her the okay to go into her dad's room. So Maura ended up waiting in the hotel lobby for quite a bit of time by herself, waiting for the hotel manager to come. They came, obviously the manager got there, gave her access, and she spoke to her dad, told her that she had totaled his car, and he was upset. The upset that your parents are when you do something bad, but they're not gonna yell at you and chew your head off over it. He was just more disappointed. How could you do that? That's very dangerous. You could have gotten caught by the police if you were drinking. Things like that. You know what I mean? You could have gotten into a lot of trouble. So Fred ended up, checking out of the motel, dropping Maura at her dorm, getting a rental car. He ended up asking Maura to pick up the paperwork from the police station for the accident. So that way he could make sure that the insurance will finish covering the cost for the car. Meaning he probably have to pay $500, which he did state he only had to pay $500 to completely get the car fixed and get everything fine. Damn, he got lucky.
What the hell? Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that means that the damage wasn't that bad then.
No. Apparently the car had $8,000 worth of damage.
Damn, that's some pretty lenient insurance.
Well, he probably never had an accident like that before.
A lot of these insurance companies don't give a damn about any of that.
Well, nowadays.
You can drive clean for 30 years. They still want to charge you $400, and the second that you crash that car, they go, what?
Ew.
Bet. And,
But you never know. They're probably going to tax him later and raise his insurance.
That's true,
Usually
yeah.
that's also what they do. Insurance companies have their own weird tricks up.
So he got off. So $500 is not that bad.
He was not that bad. So he was already disappointed, but it didn't make it worse. You know what I mean? So she got lucky. So he asked her to make sure that she picked up the paperwork from the police to show the report to the insurance so they could fix the car. So this was something that Maura had to do, and this was the last time that he spoke to Maura, because on February 8th. This was February 8th. On February 9th. Yeah, this was February 8th. By the time he woke up. So later on in the day, he woke up, all that stuff. Next day comes after the accident, after, the dad figured everything out.
So this is February 9th now.
Now we're on February 9th, the day that she disappeared. Around 3:32 in the morning, Maura submitted her nursing homework. A lot of people had had theories about her homework, because her homework, Maura's homework, was related to pregnancy. So a lot of people were like, well, maybe she's trying to give us a clue that she was pregnant. But it was really just her homework that she submitted at 3:32 in the morning. Not, I'm pregnant and I'm running away.
Okay.
So that's just one of the internet theories out there. But at 3:32, she submitted her homework. At around 4 a.m., she finished doing whatever she was doing on her laptop and went to sleep. Apparently, right before she went to sleep, she looked up directions to Burlington, Vermont. So this was verified by police and forensics when they did the research after she disappeared. She looked up directions to Burlington, Vermont. She had never been to Burlington, Vermont. According to her family, this was something new.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, confused. What's up there?
Yeah, they were.
So she has no connection with anybody or anything that's up there.
That's up there. So it's just directions that she looked up. A couple hours later, she wakes up and she calls Linda, a condo owner at the Seasons in Bartlett, New Hampshire. Bartlett, New Hampshire is a place where she actually had been with her family. It's a place where they visited, they went on trips, went on hiking trips, did all these things. So this made sense to the family. Then around 1 p.m., after that phone call, around 1 p.m., Maura emailed Bill saying she didn't really feel well, didn't really feel like talking, wanted to be alone. Apparently, Bill had been calling Maura for a bit. He'd been trying to reach her. Maura just wasn't answering and didn't feel like talking. At 1:13, Maura called her classmate to return some clothes, but Erin said, you could return it whenever you want. I trust you. I don't really need the clothes right now. So, you could return it to me whenever you want. At 1:24 p.m., so 9 minutes later, Maura emailed her professors saying there was a death in the family. This is what puzzles people to this day. Julie believes just Maura wanted to buy some time to get away from school without having to explain why. She kind of wanted like a mental health day without having to explain why she needs a mental health day.
Okay.
But this is to be speculated because there was no death in the family. So
I figured that there was no death in the family.
Yeah, there was no death in the family. So that's why her sister speculates that. Then around 2:05 p.m., Maura called a ski resort in northern Vermont. No one knows what the call was, but they know that the number that she called for the ski resort was just a computer operated line. So it was like one of those to check the weather, to check reservations, to check this type of line. The call lasted about a minute and she hung up. The call ended. Then about between 2:15 and 2:25, Maura and Bill kind of like were trying to call each other like hey, they were playing phone tag. At around 3 p.m., Maura returned her clothes to Erin and left them at the door folded. Maura tried to knock on Erin's door that day, but Erin didn't answer. Erin was apparently taking a nap.
Okay.
So, there was no contact there. Around 3:15, Maura went out to go take out $280 from her bank account. So from the records, apparently Maura didn't have more than $300 in her bank account. She had less than that. And back then, they used to complicate taking out money. You could only take it out in 20s or, things like that. So Maura took out the max she could take out from her bank account. She drove her old beat-up car to go take out that money because she had no other car. Her dad had just, she had just totaled her dad's car. So she just completely went to take out all the money. And from the footage that cops obtained from the bank account, she was by herself. She didn't have anyone with her. She was wearing a white jacket with jeans, black shoes, a silver necklace, and had her hair tied up. Afterwards, Maura went to a liquor store and purchased alcohol. A lot of people were like, well, Maura probably has alcohol problems. Julie's sister believes that is not the case, that Maura just purchased the ingredients for her favorite drink. So some of the ingredients were like Kahlua, like vodka, like drinks that you need to buy to make a mixed drink.
Okay.
But you can't buy in like tiny bottles.
Yeah. What do we know about this mixed drink? What type of drink was it?
It's not said. It just, we know that it has Kahlua in it. It's probably Kahlua, I believe, is like a blue sugary substance. I'm not sure what exactly it is. But we just know that Maura went to the liquor store, bought alcohol, and also recycled cans.
You can buy recycled cans at the
she recycled the cans at the liquor store, and then bought alcohol.
She recycled her own old cans.
Mm-hmm. She recycled cans. Like when you recycle cans,
you just go and get the 5 cents.
Yeah. You get your 5 cents for however many cans you bring. That's what she did.
And then she bought alcohol.
At the liquor store. Next, afterwards, at 4:37 p.m., Maura checked her voicemail for the last time. And we know this was the last time because it was the last recorded activity on her phone. Meaning it's the last time she probably used the tower or the service to try to call anyone to do anything. So from then on, we don't know anything about Maura or anything about her surroundings until 7:27 p.m. So we know that, Maura looked up directions to Burlington, Vermont. She bought alcohol. She returned her stuff. She turned in her homework, said there was a family death. And she was using the old beat-up car that she was trying to get rid of. At 7:27 p.m. in a small town close to the border of Vermont, a woman named Mrs. Westman made a call to the police department. She had said to have heard a loud thud and found a car had slid off the road on the eastbound lane facing Route 112. That night was particularly dark when Mrs. Westman made the call, so she didn't have much to describe. The only thing she told the operator on the police line was that she saw a man smoking in the car. That's all she had said.
Wait, she saw a man smoking in the car before it went off the road?
No. After it, like as she's looking at it, she's a man smoking in the car.
So the car is off the road already.
Yes, the car is off the road
in a ditch or something.
Yes.
And there's a man sitting inside smoking.
That's what Mrs. Westman.
The car is smoking, or the guy is smoking.
The guy is smoking. That's what she reports to have seen.
Okay.
So this is the night that Maura disappeared. This is around the time that people last see Maura and her old beat up black Saturn. And
the car that the woman is describing is Maura's car?
Yes.
Is the guy in the driver's seat or the passenger seat?
She didn't say.
Oh, damn, people not giving specifics.
Not the damn.
No, those specifics matter.
Those specifics do matter.
Those specifics matter.
They do matter.
If the person if somebody's sitting in the car and they're smoking, but they're sitting in the back seat.
Yeah.
That's way different than if they're sitting in the driver's seat of a car that doesn't belong to them.
Right.
Rather than if they're sitting in the passenger seat of a car that doesn't belong to them.
Right.
All of those make a difference.
Right. No, they do.
Yeah.
They
okay.
do.
Yeah.
But minutes later, another passerby calls the police. The passerby was a man known as Arthur Butch Atwood. He was a local bus driver who was returning home from dropping off students off at a ski trip at Wildcat Mountain. So he was Mrs. Westman's neighbor, and he was just getting home in his school bus, in his bus. So he stopped by, and he asked Maura if she was okay, if she needed anything, if she needed him to call the police.
Wait, he saw Maura.
So he saw Maura.
Did he see the smoking guy?
No, he did not. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get to the.
I'm curious about Mr. Sig.
Mr. Sig. So he stopped.
Yeah.
He asked Maura, if she wanted him to call the police, if she wanted to wait at his house, but Maura declined. She said she had already called AAA. Arthur knew that she was lying because right in that corner, that little area that Maura ran off the road into the ditch, there was no cell service. To this day, apparently, there's no self-service there. No cell service right there.
In that spot.
So he knew she was lying. So as soon as he got home, he parked his bus into his driveway and called the police. He told the police that he saw a man hit a pine tree and the airbags were deployed. And then he switched the pronouns and said she was shaking up. She couldn't see that. He said that he couldn't see any blood on the person in the car, on her. He couldn't see any blood on her. So a lot of people were confused because he said he hit the tree, and then he said she has no blood. She looks shaken up. So this is very confusing, and this is a point that people bring up for a very long time.
So he only mentioned the fact that there was one person.
Yes.
But at first he called her a him, and then
switched it to a she.
Yeah, I just find it weird that, the lady described it as a man, and then
he described it as a man
at first, and then described her as a woman.
Right.
Like, could it be something that she was wearing maybe that night that made people initially think that she was a man? Because he was closer to her than the lady that did the call from her house.
But then, again, maybe he confused. Like, you know how sometimes you just confuse certain things, like you're tired or you've had a long day or you're worried, I guess, and you kind of confuse certain things. You might be like, he, and then she.
No, you mean like your brain says one thing, but your mouth says the other? It
says the other. Okay. Yeah, there's a chance. There's a chance that he was also probably nervous because he doesn't know. She lied about calling the cops, and then he came home and called the cops knowing that she didn't call the cops. You know what I mean? So he's like, this is a little bit too much of a weird, shady situation. Or he did something. We don't know. That's the thing. We don't know because it's still a cold case. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's one of those weird ones. But also, apparently, Arthur, over time, gave different accounts to different people. So at first, his account was he got off. He was on the bus and he spoke to Maura from his bus. His second account was, I got off the bus and I shined a flashlight. And then his third account, to the family specifically, was that he got off the bus, he's showing a flashlight, and he was talking to Maura face to face because she was outside of the car and in front in the hood, and he was like 10-15 feet away from her. So this is what makes it even more weird, because
why the hell would he give 3 separate accounts like that? So what's the first one he gave that he never got off the bus?
Never got off the bus.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me just play devil's avocado for 2 seconds. Maybe there's a chance that he actually did get off the bus. Like the third one is true.
Right.
But he just didn't want to admit that in the beginning because when he found out that she was missing, he said, well, our conversation was just some normal, hey, is everything all right? Do you want me to call the cops? No, whatever. And then he just left. But he's like, the fact that she ended up missing and everyone knows that I'm the last one that spoke to her, I don't want to be deemed as a suspect because I know I really didn't do anything. So maybe I'm just going to say that I stayed on the bus.
Right.
But then as he saw that people were really, really prying, he said, all right, maybe it's best if I'm honest. And then he told what it was. But that would make you look more sus. I don't know.
That's what makes it even more suspicious, because he also spoke to news and articles and things like that. And he also lied. He also said a whole different account. So that's what's weird. This is just what makes it weird. So at 7:43, a minute after he called 911, he received a call from dispatch saying they found no female in the car.
How long
nowhere
later?
In the vicinity. A minute later.
A minute later,
Yes. But remember, Mrs. Westman had called the police at 7:27. And at 7:46, Officer Cecil Smith arrived on scene. This is on record that he arrived on scene at 7:46.
He arrived on scene.
Right.
But 2 minutes before that, they were saying that there was no girl.
Yes.
At 7:44, they said there was no girl at the scene.
Yes.
How would they know that if he got on scene at 7:46?
7:46. Exactly. And that's what bothers the family, because there's no concrete, there's no consistencies with this police thing.
What?
It's so weird. There's no, I don't know.
So either he lied about what time he got on scene.
Right.
Or he really doesn't know what time he got on scene. He just made up a time. But in this 15 to 20 minutes that this woman went missing is the most crucial part of the case.
Exactly. Because when Cecil Smith arrived on the scene, he said he found the Saturn locked, meaning you couldn't open the doors. He said it was abandoned and Maura was nowhere in sight. There were no footprints, and around that time it had snowed in Woodsville, so the snow was already etched on the sides. You know, when they clean out the highways and stuff, the snow was on the sides piled up, so there were no footprints on the snow. There were no footprints on the grass, on the snow, no footprints. Maura was nowhere to be found. The car was locked once again. He also said the driver's windshield was cracked. Both airbags were deployed, and the driver's side bumper and hood were damaged.
Bumper and hood?
Yes, front bumper. Oh, no, bumper and hood were damaged. Yep, the back bumper and the front hood was damaged. Yep. Okay. That sounds very suspicious.
Yeah, that sounds like she got hit in the back, and then it went off the road and then hit
whatever it hit. Exactly, which is very sus. But he also said, the police officer, Mr. Smith, said he also noticed red liquid on the driver's side door and the ceiling, and a box of red wine in the driver's back seat. When Smith asked the Westmans if they had seen Maura, they had said they stopped looking and they never went out to look in the first place. They were apparently busy doing something in their house that they never went outside to look. They were like, "Oh, something happened."
So they just saw when the car crashed. They saw
they heard.
They heard when the car crashed.
Right.
They thought they saw what looked like a man.
Right.
Smoking a cigarette.
Yep.
In which all of Maura's close friends and family said that she doesn't smoke. Which we don't know if that's true or not.
Right.
And then they just stopped looking when the bus came, or when the cops came?
When the cops came.
So they saw when the bus came.
Yes. But the bus was also blocking the view between the Westmans and Maura's car.
So when the bus pulled off, were they still looking?
Apparently.
And she was still there.
She was.
And then the cops.
Well, they don't say whether she was still there or not. They just say that it was.
They just. So what?
Yes.
So clearly they stopped watching before.
Probably. They say that they were watching until the cops came, but we don't know because clearly.
Because you can't tell me what happened right before the cops came, whether or not she was still there or not.
Right. So that's what's weird. Yes, and the only person who mentioned that the person in the car was a woman was Atwood. Remember, Mrs. Westman said it was a man smoking, which is weird. So around 7:54 p.m. after Mr. Cecil Smith gets on the scene, there was a bolo that went out. A bolo is a be on the lookout. The bolo was said to describe Maura as a woman that was 5'7". Julie said that Maura was 5'7", but it's odd that the bolo would be put out for a woman that's 5'7" when Mrs. Westman described a man, and Mr. Atwood said that it was a man, but then it was a girl, but that he wasn't close to the girl. So that's what's very weird, because how is that description?
How would you know she's 5'7"?
Exactly. Well, spot on too.
Well, let's play a little bit of devil's avocado again. Mm-hmm. The average height of a male back in 2004, is this?
Yeah, 2004.
It is 5'7".
All right.
The fact that she thought that it was a man from outside the window, her guess would be that maybe, it's 5'7". Same thing with the bus driver.
That's
the bus
true.
driver, whether he's close or not, you can kind of gauge how tall somebody is. Like you,
but sitting down in a car, if you were sitting down in your bus,
no,
and you saw somebody in the car,
if somebody's sitting down in a car, you can't tell.
That's what the point is. It's like, how would this police officer be able to say that this person was 5'7"?
Maybe maybe they didn't run the license plate, know exactly who it was, and just saw the driver's license and was able to tell that the person was 5'7"?
It doesn't say. We don't know.
Because who has to put out a bolo? The cops.
The cops.
Yeah, so the cops probably ran the license plate, said this belongs to Maura, and then
We don't know because no one's really no cop is really
because the bolo also has her picture on it, doesn't it?
No, it's just they're on the lookout for a woman that is 5'7". Oh. Now here was another thing that was an issue earlier. There was a lot of discussion over jurisdiction because when Mr. Atwood had called 911, he got redirected to the police district over on the next town because apparently the police district that he called for was busy or wasn't picking up or something like that. Okay. So he got redirected. So now there was an issue over jurisdiction of which police department had right over Maura's case. And I think that issue also came from the fact that the call was misdirected. Not only because...
Well, not misdirected, redirected.
Redirected. I'm sorry. The call was redirected. Yeah. But also apparently Maura's car was in a weird part where it was on the edge of Vermont. So it really technically belonged to another police department. So it was just this very weird mix-up that day. Also, around 9 o'clock, Cecil Smith didn't see anything. He called the tow truck company. Well, he closed the case. He said, all right, we're done here. He sent everybody home. He called the tow truck company and he told them to come pick up Maura's car. Usually, his police department calls a specific tow truck company. But he called some other secondary tow truck company, and that was even more weird because why are you calling a secondary tow truck company? And it so just happens to be that the secondary tow truck company that Cecil Smith called took Maura's car into their private, like their personal parking garage, not like their work garage, like their private garage. And that's weird because the police now need to go and investigate this car. So this car that needs to be investigated by the police is parked in a private, personal parking lot instead of the business, the tows garage. And that's what's even more shadier.
It's like even if you were to pick up a normal car, you wouldn't even park it there. So why are you parking this clearly in a car that clearly needs to be investigated? Why are you parking it?
Why are you parking in this private area?
That is weird.
That's what
I hate cases that like go like this because somebody's already missing and that's already one thing within itself.
Right.
But then when a bunch of people start doing shit that can look super shady, it's like it looks like 5 people are involved.
Oh yeah,
you know,
it looks like a million. Yeah,
it looks like the whole damn town's involved,
exactly.
Like in a cover up of some sort.
Exactly.
You know?
So when the family investigated and they went to look around and ask questions, the family spoke to the person, this person named McQueen. He showed his logs of towing that day to the Murrays, and it showed he had pulled a black and white police SUV Explorer, a cruiser, out of a snowbank, a ditch, from 4:30 to 5:10 p.m. the same day that Maura disappeared. It was probably a few hours before, but it was that same day. And now Maura's car had dents in the front and in the back of the driver's side. It just gets really shady.
Yeah, but that happened hours before she crashed.
Yes, but it's still a point of confusion because we don't know. They could be lying.
Yeah.
Because remember, Mr. Cecil Smith did say he got to the 40 scene at 7:46.
Well, no, because the ditch that they pulled the police car out of was nowhere near where Maura had, and they could have been lying about when it was pulled out.
Much later, maybe a few months later, in 2005, an independent group of retired police officers and investigators started investigating Maura's case. They investigated a report that the police chief was driving impaired and slid off the road the same day that Maura disappeared. They believe that Cecil Smith showed up and switched vehicles with the police chief. This also shows that the lady earlier Karen, who had said she passed by Maura's the scene where Maura had the accident. This also shows that Karen was not lying about seeing the police SUV passing her twice before someone arrived on the scene to Maura. Does that make sense? So Karen was driving down the same route that Maura's accident was on, and she said she saw a police SUV pass by her twice So it passed. She was going. Let's say she was going down. A police car passed her once, and then she kept going down the same road, and then the police car passed her again before she reached Maura's scene, the scene of the accident where Maura had the accident.
Oh, okay. And then what'd she see when she got to the scene?
She said she had seen Maura's car parked in a weird way, and she said she had seen a police SUV parked right in front of it, like nose to nose.
Is that the same SUV that passed her twice?
She doesn't recall.
Okay.
But it is believed that it most likely was.
And this is and if it is, then this is the same car that was pulled out of a ditch a couple hours earlier. What kind of weird small town funky shit is going on here?
Yep. And much later in other reports and other news, Smith said the reason why he passed Karen twice was because he decided to take a faster, indirect route to the scene where Maura was at, which was very weird because when Julie looked into what exactly certain things were, she discovered that Smith passed by his parents' house on the way to the scene for Maura.
Okay.
So it's just this very weird and shady thing going on where the witness said she saw the car pass the police SUV pass her twice. He said he took an indirect route, but the indirect route included or passed by his parents' house. But he also had apparently switched vehicles with the police chief who was drunk earlier.
So there's just a lot of holes.
There's a lot of holes going
and
on
somebody
here.
is lying.
Yep.
Somebody's lying.
And also something that Mr. Smith did not include in his report, and something that EMS did report, was that they had found a rag stuffed into the pipe of the tailpipe of the car in Maura's car. But Cecil Smith never said anything about that. He never reported it. It was just clearly not there.
A rag pipe.
A rag stuffed into the pipe of the SUV of Maura's car, the Saturn.
Whoa.
Which is very dangerous, considering that
you would only do that if you were trying to kill somebody.
Yes.
That was sitting in a gas car. Yeah.
So, like a few hours later, apparently on that Tuesday, February 10th, a search warrant was issued to try and identify the driver of a Saturn. 2 sergeants looked at the Saturn and took 18 items to try to identify the driver. They found multiple things with Maura's name, so they concluded that it was Maura. One of the things that they found was a piece of paper with a random name and number. The second thing that they found was a piece of paper which included the police report for the accident that Maura had gotten in a few days earlier, which her dad asked her to get.
Yeah.
And the third was a paper asking the state of New Hampshire to reinstate her license for New Hampshire, because apparently a few months earlier, Bill and Maura had taken a trip in New Hampshire, and she had to drop Bill off at the airport because he had gotten a very important call from his officers that he was currently working at in the Army, that he needed to fly to a base. So Maura had, that time that she got stopped, Maura had gotten caught for speeding. Mm-hmm. And I guess the speed that she was going at was extremely dangerous, to the point where they told her, hey, next time you drive here, you will need to show us a paper that you're reinstating your license. So that is the exact, in the state, and that is the exact paper that she had in her car.
Huh.
Now, once they found out that that was her identity, a second bolo was issued for a woman who was about 5'5". Now the height changed. The first bolo, which was just a woman, 5'7", was handed out that same night. A second bolo the next day was given out for a woman about 5'5".
So which one was her actual height?
5'7".
Okay. So the one that they actually put out with her actual name and information on it, they got that wrong.
They got that wrong.
What the heck?
That's because it's not accurate.
It's not accurate. So now we're looking for the wrong person.
Exactly.
But on the first day, you got it right.
Right.
And you didn't have
and
any
you
information.
didn't have any information. And this is now the next day. So around 3 p.m., it is discovered that Cecil Smith called the Massachusetts Police Department in which the Saturn was registered in, and he was able to contact Maura's family. So now this is almost 24 hours later that he is telling Maura's family, hey, she is missing.
Yeah.
Which I guess it's standard procedure, but not really.
No, I don't think so.
Because I don't know
how long. I think either he just sucked at his job or he is covering something up.
Apparently. So when Fred finally called at 8 p.m., they took forever to answer. They kind of kept giving him the runaround. And when he finally reached a police officer, they kind of were like annoyed. They were like, what do you want? Type of behavior. And that was very odd, especially for a police department that should be investigating a missing woman in their town. But next morning,
yeah, like Fred, how you gonna give me an attitude? Like, is it your daughter that's missing or is it mine?
Or is it mine?
Last time I checked, it was mine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you should be investigating it. Attitude free. Anyway, Fred head over the next morning. Fred began to head over for Woodsville, and when he got there, he found out that he was literally the only person on the Maura search team. The cops weren't doing squat. They weren't doing anything. And then that's when he just kind of like got tight and was like, what the hell? So he went over to the police station and he spent the entire day there. And when he stepped out for air a few hours later, he stumbled upon the canine unit, and they told him that they lost track of her about 100 yards out, like 100 yards from the scene where she crashed.
One of my theories was going to be that the crash happened and that, you know, if you're in an area that doesn't have cell service, and clearly she's the type of person to lie in a scenario where she's has to have too much conversation with people, if she was willing to lie to her supervisor and say, hey, I have somebody up in the dorm, so there's no need to come upstairs, right, then I can see how she's more willing to lie to a stranger in the middle of the dark highway, like, hey, I'm good, I called the cops already, the cops are already on their way, just leave me alone.
Right, which is what she did with Arthur.
Well, supposedly that's what she did with Arthur. So I can see how she would give that explanation just to get people off. But
in a scene like that, though, I don't feel like she would.
There's a chance that maybe she experienced some head trauma on top of her already going through all this stress and everything like that. You never know. Maybe she started walking off into the woods, stumbled, and then kind of succumbed to the elements. But everything else that happened is kind of alluding to the fact that didn't happen because all the other shady shit. So.
Right. So the family, now got down. Bill found out. He was able to kind of like get his way over to Woodsville, and so was his family and his mentors. As they began investigating, they started questioning people. They questioned Atwood, the Westmans, and there was also they found out there was also a man whose house was like sort of next to the crash, but not really, who saw that night. He saw Maura's car back up. He saw the backup lights, like when you reverse, he saw the reverse lights, and that's about as much as he had to say. But if it is
after the crash, okay, so
they believe that Maura backed up and reversed back and out from the ditch. There were also a lot of
but that doesn't make any sense. The car was still there.
Yeah, it was parked on the side, but remember the airbags had deployed. There was bumps. There was a crack on the windshield. Like, there were a lot of things that were going on in the car. So it wasn't. I don't think she would have just driven off with the car and the airbags deployed. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay. So he's saying, hey, all I saw was that
this car was reversing.
The car was reversing out of the ditch, right, and that's how it got on the side.
That's how it got on the regular side road. It wasn't on the ditch. It was on the side road without being towed.
Before it got towed, okay.
Yeah, before it got towed out of the route. But they began investigating. They found that out. They talked to the Westmans. Everybody seemed friendly and kind of like chill. As they began investigating, they found out that the police weren't doing anything. The police hadn't questioned people. The police hadn't done nothing. They had done nothing at all. And this really bothered the family, so they began kind of like asking for news coverage. And that's how they finally got these freaking police people to cooperate with them. Then they, by I think the third or fourth day out, the police then finally started questioning people. And it was only Bill's mentors that found out, because I guess they started questioning people, and they were like, did the police talk to you? And they said no. So that's what brought it to their attention. It was just a lot of like family doing the work for the police. And also the police weren't cooperating. They weren't telling them any details. They weren't giving them anything. When, they kind of went to go look at the car was just there, not being looked at, not being investigated, just sitting in a lot. And when they looked, also when the police looked in the car, there was no phone, no keys, no wallet, no ID, no money. The money that she took out that day, not there. The alcohol, not there. There were a lot of things.
The alcohol, but they said that the wine was in the back seat.
But not the alcohol. The other alcohol she had bought. Remember, she bought Kahlua and then some other things. Some vodka or something. That was not there. That was not in the car. So they were like, what the hell? Like, okay, the ID, the wallet, the phone. Cool. But everything else, like the alcohol is not in the car. That's weird. Because what reason would the police have to take the alcohol? That makes no sense. Yeah. As they continued investigating, they found out, remember, like we mentioned before, that the police weren't doing anything correct. They just kept hiding information, weren't being cooperative. They even apparently threatened some retired police officer in the town who offered to help the family, that they would arrest him. They would arrest the retired police officer if he cooperated and helped the family. They would charge him with what is it? With
obstruction of justice?
Yes. No. Obstruction of an investigation.
Yeah. Okay. So with that being said, I can confidently say now that the cops most likely had something to do with Maura disappearing, because when it came to anybody else, you didn't care that the family was talking to them. But the second that they talk to a retired cop, now all of a sudden you're nervous.
Now you have a problem.
Now you have a problem, because you know that he knows exactly what to look for.
Exactly.
And that he'll probably see something that can tie back to you guys. Or he's going to say something to you guys that's going to make you suspicious of us. And we don't want that.
And we don't want that.
Yeah.
Yep. And the way this happened, the way they threatened him was really weird, because his name was, I believe, John Smith. He called Maura's older sister, Kathleen. Kathleen was very weary, I guess, of like just someone contacting her, like helping. So she called them and told them, hey, this person said he's a retired cop and he's offering to help. Is this like true? Is this like, are they really retired? After Kathleen called the police department, that's when they went to John Smith and they told him, if you help them, we're going to obstruct you. And then it wasn't until months later that Fred went to John and asked him for help. So the police, whatever they had to cover up, whatever time that was between John contacting Kathleen and then Fred contacting Kathleen, whatever they had to do, they probably cleared it up. They probably cleaned up their mess. Wow. To add on, probably like 8 years after the accident or something like that, the chief police resigned because somebody in his department had caught him drunk driving and given him a ticket. And then it became really apparent that he had a problem. So he resigned. And guess who became chief of police next?
The guy that helped him cover it up. That guy that's suspected of helping him cover up the fact that he was,
the same cop that was investigating Maura's disappearance.
That's crazy.
Yes, it's disgusting. So top this off, that same night, there were a lot of reports of cars that were just driving very weird. There was a white Jeep, a Grand Cherokee, that was seen, that was called for suspicious behavior. So when the police got to wherever the Jeep was parked, the Jeep just ran off. And they never caught him. Apparently, the Jeep had out-of-state license plates. So that was weird. And to top it off, Maura's family found a Chrysler body part in the Saturn.
What?
Yes. And Chrysler, if you don't know, Chrysler is the company that manufactures the Jeeps.
What the?
Yep.
a Chrysler car body part.
Yeah.
In the
Saturn.
In the Saturn.
Yep.
And the cleaning rag in the
tailpipe.
The tailpipe.
So when Julie talked about that with Fred on the podcast, Fred did talk about it, and he said, that same day that he went to, he was helping Maura fix the Saturn, he told her, if you need to drive this car, like, I would stuff the rag on the pipe to prevent the smoke from coming out, so that the cops don't stop you.
That was gonna be another theory of mine. So now that makes sense as to why, if her license was not reinstated yet, and she needed to drive up there,
right,
in order to not get stopped, kind of like what her dad said, she would stick the
rag in the tailpipe so that the car wouldn't smoke.
And if she already got stopped before for erratic driving,
right,
she probably started driving,
right.
Who knows? Maybe it was erratic. Maybe it was not. She already had a history of crashing the car. She just but she crashed her dad's car.
No, she totaled her dad's car.
She totaled her dad's car on a guardrail. Right. So if you're driving up there in Vermont and it had just recently snowed and all this stuff, I can see how you can now get into an accident, which would explain the accident and the rag in the car, along with the paperwork,
right,
to get reinstated, as well as the airbags being deployed, because you've already clearly you're a speed demon of some sort,
right?
Because if you were driving so fast and or reckless before, that way you needed permission to get your license reinstated, it would make sense as to why the car got totaled when you hit a guardrail,
right?
And why, the car was so jacked up and both airbags deployed when you crashed.
Right.
Now, as far as how you ended up disappearing now,
doesn't make
my
sense.
Theory, if I'm being like optimistic, is that she probably felt super disappointed and distraught that she crashed.
Right.
And she said, you know what? Screw this. And was like, I'm just going to leave the car here. Because if the cops come and the cars crash and all this other stuff, I'm going to get in some serious trouble. I'm not even supposed to be driving here.
Right.
So she probably just said, screw it. I'm going to take my ID. I'm going to take my money and I'm going to go and start a whole new life.
I feel like that's too deep.
Away from everybody.
I feel like
away
that's
from
a little
everything.
too deep. I feel like
that's my optimistic thought.
I see what you're saying.
Because I can see a ton of reasons. Because the same way she left the other school and said, screw it, I'm just going to start a whole new school life. Mm-hmm. Same way. She probably said, look, man, I started a whole new school life. A whole bunch of bad shit happened again. You know what? I'm out.
I think that's what the cops wanted to believe too, because they were hunching on, especially at the beginning when the news started hounding them to investigate, the cops were very much pointing to the fact that she ran away or she killed herself, like she ended her life. But a lot of people, and then especially Julie's family, they disprove that, because why would you recycle cans from your current life? Why would you recycle cans to just go? A lot of people believe, like Julie believes.
Well, no, you got to think. Her friend that she returned the clothes to as well said you don't need to return it today, and she still went out her way to return it.
Right.
She clearly was calling all these vacation spots that she had been to.
Right.
And she didn't reserve anything, but she called just to check reservations. That's why the call was only a minute long. You don't need, if you're going to speak to an automated bot and it's going to tell you whether or not there's reservations available or not, you don't need to be on the phone for long.
Yes.
Another thing, she called up in Vermont at a place that she had never been before. Mm-hmm. And clearly she was trying to get there.
Well, she didn't call. She drove. She looked up directions.
She looked up directions to this place that's way up in Vermont, to a place that she's never been before, had no connection. And later on that day, she ends up in Vermont. She clearly took out all that money, because you never know. She's probably thinking, what if something about the car breaks down? What if anything? I need the cash to obviously get up there. We don't know if she was going up there to meet somebody, but what I'm saying is that a lot of evidence shows that she clearly was just trying to get away from her current situation.
Julie believes that she was just trying to get a break And that's why she did all those things. She was just trying to go, because she also had one of her favorite books with her in the car. And that book talks about, it's a story about like just hiking and trailing in that part of the woods that she was in.
You see?
So a lot of people are like, well, maybe she was just trying to run away and she just ran off into the woods because of the book. But really, that was her favorite book. That's what Julie had said.
So that's my thinking, right? It's that like maybe the plan was, hey, I just want to get away from myself.
Right.
And then after that happened and she crashed, she's like, look, what the like I've already been in trouble twice.
Right.
I can't be in trouble again. And there's alcohol in the car. And she was probably drinking, who knows. And the car is fucked up. Now it's definitely total. I have no way to get back home.
But there was also no service.
And there's no cell service. So she probably started even walking just to get cell service.
Right.
There's a lot that's going on. She was already stressed out, having emotional breakdowns.
That's true.
That would point to a lot of reasons as to why she just said, you know what, she wasn't answering the phone earlier in the day when the boyfriend was calling. She probably this is me playing like the optimistic devil avocado, right? Outside of the worst case scenario of what a lot of people probably think happened, which is that she was like murdered. Right. My hopeful guess would be that after that happened, she got emotionally distraught. She walked off trying to call and was like, you know what, like had a drastic decision made. Like,
but
I'm just gonna change the course of my life.
But that's the thing. Here's what's also confusing, right? It's yes, she could change the course of her life and do all these things, but also I don't understand how all of these things were happening all at once. The car, the police cruiser 001 had passed the lady twice. The lady, remember, the lady had given her accounts to the family, but the lady also called 911 and told them that she saw the police cruiser drive past her twice, and they called her back saying, "Are you sure?" asking as if like they were expecting her to say no. And that's what she was confused at, because also when Julie's family looked at like police records, the police records for Cecil Smith show that on version 1 he gave a ticket to two people, a snowmobiler, someone who was speeding, and some other person that day. But on version 2 of the records, those tickets are not there, as if he never gave them tickets. It's not that the tickets were dismissed, it's just that as if he never gave them tickets.
So you're saying that there's too much police cover-up.
Too much police cover-up for that entire day. And that doesn't make sense. And then to top it all off, it just gets crazier, because there was another last report that said that there was a weird red truck with a wood back, like it probably wood in the back, that was driving by. It was acting suspicious. Lady had told the cop like, hey, this car is acting suspicious. It stopped right in front of the lady, stared at her, and as she started approaching the car, it drove off. And apparently that same truck belonged to a man who lived not too far from where Maura had her accident. Now, years later, it is found out that that same guy was very abusive to his significant others. He would oftentimes go for younger women. He would oftentimes abuse them. And to top it off, when they did another canine search, the dogs started barking for deceased bodies in his house. So when they went to go look, they found that there was a closet, kind of like was like full of blood. It wasn't blood, like it was like dried blood. When they did the test to see if there was blood in the closet, they did it on the carpet of the closet and it came out positive. So when the police officers at that time sent out the sample of the rug to labs to figure out if that might have been Maura's body, it got lost.
Oh God.
It got lost. And it's just this weird case of a lot of like people who might have done it, people who could have done it, kind of like the John Bonet thing, where people were like, I did it, or I have her hostage, or I killed her. Just a lot of weird speculation, and the cops aren't helping. Their weird behavior is not helping. My theory is that Maura probably got into some sort of accident. I don't really know if someone tapped her, if the drunk police officer that they tapped her, we don't know what it is, but she got into an accident, probably was unconscious for a little bit, got out of the car, took her belongings with her, couldn't contact anybody from her cell phone because in that little corner where she got into an accident, there's no cell service. So she started walking towards like a part of the road where there is service, and then ended up getting snatched. I would not. That is my theory, and I don't have a theory as to who might have done it. Probably a local or someone who passes by that road, but I really think that is a huge fact. And I think that the police were not investigating Maura's case because they were too busy trying to cover up the chief police officer's bullshit.
Of being a drunk driver.
Yeah. If he was not involved in Maura's disappearance.
Yeah.
Or they.
Yeah, that's unfortunate that somebody goes missing in a town and then the police aren't even of help.
Nope.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
It's crazy. Now Fred, Maura's dad, has not given up the search, and neither has Maura's family. If you have any information about Maura's disappearance, please call the New Hampshire State Police Cold Case Unit at 603-223-3648. To learn more about Maura or see the sources used for this episode, please visit missingmauramurray.org. If you have any more suggestions of other cases we should do, please comment them down below. If you like this episode, make sure you hit the like button, and we will see you guys next time. Bye.
Take care. Bye.